You're listening to Transcendental Talks Toronto, transcending your mind, elevating your consciousness.
Welcome to another episode of Transcendental Talks Toronto, podcast where we connect with each other through discussions about elevating our consciousness from a spiritual perspective. Through conversations with a variety of guests, we will delve into how to balance material and spiritual pursuits, experiences along the spiritual journey, self-improvement, practice of Bhakti yoga or devotion to the divine, challenges, tips, and inspiration, all in a way that is both deeply relevant and fun.
Today's topic will be on the power of Bhakti in transforming one's life. Bhakti means connecting to the divine through means of loving service. We will dive into various ways in which one can integrate Bhakti into their life by practices, balances, obstacles, and challenges. I'm Punya Shravana.
And I'm Radha Priya, and we're your hosts at Transcendental Talks Toronto.
Today, we're very delighted to have a special guest on our show. She was raised in Hawaii, grew up in the Bhakti tradition, and is currently working on pursuing her PhD studies. Welcome, Kumari Kunti. We are so excited to have you here.
Hi, thanks. Yes, so great to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to get your perspective on how I know, okay, to get started, we would love to know, how you joined, how you came through Krishna consciousness. I know you grew up in Bhakti, so how did it all happen? Give us a little overview of your family, your childhood, your upbringing.
Sure. Yeah. So like you mentioned, I did grow up in it, but there's still a choice, right? When you're making any spiritual path, honestly, any major commitment in your life, there's still that point of choice. Like, is this for me? So my family, my mom is joined the movement way back in the day, the 60s, I guess, is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. She was in the West Coast of the US. Different things. There was a lot of things going on. She moved to Hawaii and raised us there. And we have an ISKCON temple there on Oahu, and then smaller centers on the other islands, because Hawaii's 8 islands, right? So I grew up on Oahu, where we have our ISKCON temple, beautiful Panchatattva, gorgeous, just honestly a magical place, even still when I go back. There's a beautiful banyan tree in the back, and we just, grew up playing outside. Priya can attest, just playing and, seeing the temple more of as a jungle gym than necessarily a spiritual place as it is. But enjoying that kind of lifestyle, going to the temple and things. And then we moved to the other island where there wasn't a temple, but we helped with some of the home programs. We'd have home programs at our house. We even got lucky enough that Bhakti Tirtha Swami came to our house one time for a program. I love him. When I met him, I was like in awe, and I thought, wow, I really like this. It was one of those defining moments where like, wow, it's really interesting. And I was young, maybe 11 at the time, I think. So actually becoming, a practitioner of Bhakti and thinking I could do this my whole life was probably closer to like 18 or 19 that I said, I think, as much as there's a lot of things that I'm like, I'm not sure all about everything, there's enough that I'll commit to this lifestyle, which has a lot of good in it. And I'm gonna, search for that. So probably, around that time in college or so, or just before college, that I started taking it more seriously as my own self-commitment. And then that led me on a long journey of finding, which I think is so important for every individual on any spiritual path, but Bhakti is like finding specifically what about it that inspires you, because there's so much variety there. We have an amazing tradition of philosophy and ritual and, the temple elements, but there are little pockets of amazing parts that individuals can connect with. And for me, it's always been kind of the philosophy. Like my favorite part of a temple program is class. I know that's weird, but I've always been the one. I mean, a good class and a really nice, deep philosophical discussion. Favorite part. I've always been like, but that's the part that keeps me. So I kind of followed that journey, and it led me to, other places, including Toronto in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Even for me, I think when you are growing up and even any sort of path or faith or religion, obviously if your family is doing it, you're like blindly following it and you're like, hey, this is what's right. But making that decision as an independent decision on like, this is why I'm actually doing it is so important.
Yeah.
And I like how you were like, yeah, at 18, this is when I realized like this is for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think like what kind of um things that actually helped you make that decision? Like what were you doing like during that time?
Yeah, most definitely. So there's this exercise we've done at one of the schools I attended, Bhakti College. It's a school where we were learning about the Bhakti tradition. Amazing. And one of the exercises we did was looking for the inspiration, or maybe even gurus that you've, gurus in not formal sense, that you've met throughout your life that have led you to where you are. So often it will start with your family, for some people not. So I did that exercise, and I remember at that time, this many years ago, thinking, wow, actually there was an individual in Hawaii at the time at my temple who helped run the Sunday program, was like, kind of the temple commander, let's say. A nice family. They're from Fiji. I love them. And they were like, hey, Kumari, they're always like, Kumari, come here, just come do this. And they used to just get me to do things, and I'm like, okay. And I liked them, right? Very key. Like, I trusted them. I respected them. I liked them, this family. My whole family were friends with this family. And then he was always just like, oh, just come here, just come help. What are you doing? Just come help. And would just like get me engaged in activities and cooking and service. And eventually after a year or so, he's like, hey, you're running the Sunday program. So I started running, not necessarily all of it, but at least the part where we give food out and clean up all that, logistic stuff. And I like that kind of stuff. And so he really got me engaged. And I was like, oh, I find so much more joy when I'm giving and doing something, at the temple. Obviously, our temples have beautiful things to see, the deities. In Hawaii, we have lots of flowers and they smell amazing also. And, there's some beautiful aspects. Obviously, our food is great. But for me, it was like, hey, now that I'm doing something, giving, I have a purpose, all of a sudden there's so much more value for me here. So that was really crucial in me in that time period of like 18, 19, making that decision that like, maybe this is the path for me, because I found joy there in like doing something for everyone, doing something. It wasn't even that big of a task, but just running the program. Then I helped do some like kids programs. I love kids, doing work with them. So finding those little things, they were so important to me. Everyone else, would they even notice? They're like, oh, what's this girl doing? Who knows? But for me, it was so important, right? So I always encourage that when I speak to youth. It's like, you have to find what is bringing you joy in your path. And it could be as simple as me. It's like literally cleaning up the dishes and putting them away. And I mean, it's odd, but for me, it brought me joy, right? So I think that was crucial in that decision, was finding something, purpose, finding value and use for me in this huge, community, but also in this huge world, right? I think every single person, I would break it down to, is looking for purpose. Like, they need to be needed. They want to be needed and feel like they're doing something important with their life. And it doesn't have to be so big, right? I mean, what I was doing was not at all a big task, but I felt right. So that was for me very clear. And obviously at the time I didn't realize that, but I'm saying years later, we're looking back and saying like, how did you get where you are? That's probably one of the key elements there.
Yeah, I think just like feeling included.
It's also interesting to hear how you've been to so many different places. Like, you grew up in Hawaii, you mentioned Radadesh, which is in Belgium. Now you're in Toronto. What are some highlights that you've seen from each of the different locations you've been to? Like, what stood out?
Yeah. I often will tell people, so you grow up in a place and sometimes it's fantastic and it's a great fit. I know people who still live in Hawaii, some of my good friends, and it was a great fit for them. For me, it was a little too small, for example. And I thought, and I got lucky enough to travel with our community. We have so many amazing programs, including like a youth tour that goes around the US. And Canada. That's how I first came to Toronto. And then obviously other programs which really give you opportunity to see the world, which highly, highly recommend for anyone on any path. Absolutely necessary for opening and broadening your perspective on basically everything, including spirituality. So I got lucky. Around 19, I got to start traveling. Before that, I never traveled. So you meet anyone from Hawaii, you're like, wow, I never meet anyone from Hawaii. It's because we don't leave. It's because we don't leave Hawaii. That's why. Because it's very, very expensive, but also Hawaii is amazing. It can be. I mean, if you have the means, obviously it's an expensive place. So many people don't leave. So I felt that heavily when I was there. I call myself very super Hawaiian in my mentality, and not in a bad way. Hawaiian local culture is very accommodating, very friendly, very like community. People help you out. My car would break down in 10 minutes. Someone would be stopped trying to help me, like very much like that kind of space, very respectful. You're not gonna hear honking on the freeway. Like it's that kind of place. So it's not a bad place at all, but still it's just one perspective of the world, right? So I knew I needed to see more, and I got lucky I got to travel. So I lived in Belgium and in the UK, in London, and in Thailand and India. We have our communities. I lived there twice for 6 months, and then Alachua, Florida, where we have a big community, and then now in Toronto. So amongst all the places, anyone rather people like, yeah, I've heard Kumari say this. Anyone who knows me, my favorite place is by far probably the Bhakti Manor, our community in London, because it's just a very mature, beautiful community that has so much diversity and opportunity for any individual. I was younger then, so opportunity for me as a young person, in service, in programs, and just really that holistic community that everyone's kind of looking for. It's like, oh, what age are you? Well, here's a program that suits you. Or, what do you like doing? Oh, here's something. So they really have that framework set out. And I think I suspect it's one of our better communities in the world. And we have hundreds. So I haven't been to them all. That's not fair. But from my perspective, definitely one of our best in the community, in the world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just thinking, like, when you're even traveling or even just doing your own practices, like, have you, of course, like we all run into obstacles and challenges, but like, what have been some of your challenges when you're like growing up through this, or even currently, like what is something that sticks out?
Yeah, I think every person will probably resonate to having the obstacle of wanting, like at that time period in teenage, college years, of like wanting to kind of fit in. Mm-hmm. And wanting to not be an odd, weird person, whether it be because you're a vegetarian or you practice, a spiritual practice that people don't understand or know. Sometimes even your name. I mean, I was lucky. I never felt that. People always thought, oh, Kumari, that's so pretty. I thought, yeah, it depends. Some people have had horrible experiences with even their name in any, because it's not normal. So luckily, yeah, it wasn't on that front. So that first obstacle definitely is like, does this faith, that I'm feeling, that I've been, raised believing in, offer enough for me to be odd, to be weird, right? Like that's the first real obstacle. And that's something that even as adults, sometimes we face. We might be somewhere dressed, in our attire, and we're like, okay, got to be confident right now, because there you have to have there has to be faith, I think. Mm-hmm. And more than faith, there has to be like some attachment, some love, some connection to either, people in the community or, God themselves, to have the confidence to be a little bit different. So that's the obstacle I think everyone's faced, and I sometimes face. I sometimes go to conferences with my service, and yeah, I stand out. I went to a conference about, a religious conference, and we were definitely, myself and my colleague were the only people wearing religious garb. We're the only people wearing, outfits that weren't, suit and tie and things. And we chose to wear it. We could have worn, in a professional outfit. I have those as well. But knowing that there's more value in, I mean, at that time we chose to wear them because we were going to be speaking, and we wanted to make sure we were representing our faith, and they knew who we were. It's an easy way to spot. But that's been a challenge, I think. And it's always a challenge. It's always kind of a cycle of like, okay, come back, let's get back the confidence to be a little different in this world that doesn't make it easy to be different.
For sure. Yeah, I think just like the way that this world is like in all directions, all areas of life, you're not going to fit in anyways. Like it's just a lot. Like I think just based on even as a young person, like going through school or everyone's out partying or drinking, and it's like, hey, well, this isn't something I do or something that I want to do. And you just have to realize that you have to understand what your purpose is.
Yeah.
And from a young age too.
Yeah. And come back to that. Yeah. Come back to that like core connection that you have to a purpose or faith that keeps you, willing to go against the grain a bit. Right. Yeah.
And I know like someone like yourself, Kumari, Kunti, like you grew up in the movement. You mentioned your parents were Prabhupada disciples. Can you, like, I'm sure our guests would really like to hear a little bit more about your experiences in childhood, how you maybe navigated what you're practicing, interactions with those who are not devotees for that matter. And then did you reach a turning point in your life where you said, like, this is it. I just want to go out there and share this and have that deep level of faith and commitment?
Yeah. I think my view of it has always been, I am in the movement to help the people of, our movement. So my purpose has always felt like I want to take care of the devotees in our community. So obviously a big part of our tradition is, sharing this with others and giving them opportunity to see this amazing philosophy and, this relationship with God, which, is hard to find in any philosophy. And so there's a big aspect of that. And mine's always been like, okay, my purpose is to focus on the people we have and take care of them. And that was probably more so because of the way I was raised, and anyone who's been raised in it, you can get neglected a bit in a community that is very outward facing. So I've always, growing up, we, the youth were kind of like, you're just there, and sometimes we get engaged, and luckily I have a nature that I would find a way, and I'd take the group along and like, okay, we're going to do this. And we, help decorate, or we get our things organized, but it definitely wasn't as, structured in a way to help young people stay in our tradition, which is unusual. A lot of religious organizations will put super emphasis on their youth to stay, but we're not there yet. I'm not saying we never will be. In my community in Hawaii, absolutely, we're not in that phase. So I saw that and I thought, that's something I can help with. I mean, I have done in small ways, run youth programs and with young youth and older youth and things, because that's where my heart is. It's like, I know how much potential, if they're cared for nicely, they can bring back to our communities. Just one of them can do amazing things because they have so much depth and faith already there. So that's a little bit, the perspective of growing up in that community. And then at home, we were very, very relaxed, truthfully, very relaxed house. My mom, it was just my mom, and there's 5 of us. So it was mostly just getting by in life with us in school. And we were, we went to public school. Many of my friends were not, knew that I was a Hare Krishna. They'd say, oh yeah, Kumari's a Hare Krishna, very normal. She's a vegetarian. And some of my best friends are vegetarian, which was really nice, obviously, as a kid, because that's one of the main things, right? And all my friends knew when they'd come to our house, they'd have tons and tons of food. They'd be like, wow, so much food, and food I've never tried before, and never really thought about, oh, it's vegetarian, or, that kind of thing. So I got lucky that I had some really nice friends who I'm so close with from those years, and then onwards to college, who knew that I was on this journey and never were like, well, that's weird. They're just like, oh yeah. And in college, some of them would come with me to the temple on Sunday. I lived in, the dorms for a while, and I would bring back food for some of my friends, and they're like, oh, great. Yay. The food from the temple food, it's like, so making it very normal, right? Cause I'm a normal human being, I'm definitely, on the path, but not at all making my way so high up that I just kept it very, very, normal. I was who I was. And, with my friends, obviously, when I was really young, you're still figuring out, but by college, when I started saying, hey, this is really what I want to do, this is going to be part of my life. When you're committed and you're authentic in yourself, I think people can accept that, right? Like I had some of my best friends in college one was, a Christian, one of our friends was a Mormon, and like very, very Mormon. And we used to go and do activities with them at their school. And we were an odd bunch, a Christian, a Mormon, and a Hare Krishna, like really good friends. We'd all hang out together and do things. And Mormons are very, they don't drink and smoke and things as well, like very much part of their tradition. So they always had these crazy fun things, community activities going on. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I can go. And they did like a holy one year. I mean, their version, of a holy festival one year and things. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay. In college, and just enjoying being, kind of a normal college student, but within parameters that made sense, for me, trying to be on a spiritual path as well. Right. Like that balance of like, okay, we'll go to an all-night rave because it's at the Mormon church community, and we know there's not going to be any alcohol or anything there. Oh my gosh, those are so fun, by the way. I promise, they're like the craziest fun thing. And they have like these, the neon stuff, and there's like anyways, we had some fun nights. I was in college, we had fun, but within our, within the confines of what makes sense to keep you on a path and not like knock you off and okay, coming back up and kind of thing. So yeah, I had a very normal college. My friends of college would tell you, like, we sleep on the beach, sometimes because it's gorgeous, obviously, and wake up and like go swimming, and just a very carefree lifestyle living in Hawaii while still being, somebody trying to be on the path of Bhakti. So when I meet young people, I'm always like, yeah, I mean, don't live a life where you regret down the road, that you regret or resent something,
right?
Because you chose not, I don't do it, and you're getting resent. Like, I don't believe in resentment. Do the things you need to do to feel like a whole human being, whether that's like having fun and having friends and living life. Because if you resent, then that's the opposite of love, right? Is resentment. Yeah. I mean, so I always encourage my youth, within parameters, like have fun, like live life, because you have to experience things to understand them sometimes. Not everyone has the ability to see things from afar and understand. So experience life, do what you need to do. Don't resent the Bhakti tradition if you feel like it's limiting to you. Like, don't do that to yourself. Right. That's one of my few advice I give to them, individually, obviously. So I don't resent. I never resented, these ideas that we follow of like no drinking and smoking and all the things. I didn't resent it. I thought of it as like, well, that's good. Now I know I can't do that. And it was like that feeling where you go in a store and there's so many options. And I always felt like, well, that's easy enough. All that's out. Don't even have to think about that. I really truthfully gave me so much peace knowing that, well, I don't know anything about it, and I don't have to. I just like took it out of the sphere, and not everyone does that, and that's fine too. I don't judge anyone for making their decision, but for me it was, I think, one of the things our founder Srila Prabhupada says is the four what's the word I'm looking for freedom. It's like
principles
of freedom. Like it allows, I couldn't find the word principle. It allows you, it really frees you. And I truthfully felt that. I'm not explaining it as well as I can, but this was one of those like light bulb moments. So I was like, wow, because I don't have to even think or worry about all those things, it's actually very freeing. Time, energy, obviously, health. That was my path, but I know others take different routes. I just always recommend, don't resent. Whatever you do, find the joy in your tradition, because that's going to lead you way further than like, oh, don't do this, don't do that, because that's never gonna keep you somewhere. That's gonna turn you away versus keep you on the path, right?
For sure. I think it's just like you have to think of it as that following this Bhakti tradition isn't trying to like limit you and take you away from things. Like you're still allowed to like have friends. You're still allowed to like have fun. Yeah. So I think it's just, you got to keep that in mind. And I think like personally, how has Bhakti really helped you? Like, I know, like you said about the options, like making it easier to pick. But how has it helped you throughout your life?
Mhm. Yeah, I think one major thing which maybe some people don't think about is the community offers. A lot of people are looking for a community, a place to fit, a place to a place to say, hey, I'm amongst people that want to be around me and that I like to be around. And the community aspect has really helped, it kept me in some periods of my life. And also the ability to go, because that community is international, to travel and see the world, which as a young person was a priority for me. I'm just a normal person. I was thinking, wow, if I have the opportunity, being able to go to different temples, obviously, give back. I love to do, as I already shared, I like to do seva. I like to do service in a temple and be useful. I love being useful. It's like, oh, what can I fix? What can I do? But being able to travel the world in that way and have people wherever you go who are like, understand you, who know you. So I lived in Italy for study abroad while I was in college. And so we went, about 5 of us from Hawaii, we all made friends, the group that came together, lovely girls, still friends with some of them. And we did our 6 months there in Florence, Italy, which, is a very overpopulated study abroad city. But anyhow, and I remember thinking, I'm here with these girls, they're super sweet, but they were really, after some time, longing for their family, longing for their community, especially in Hawaii, we're very close-knit communities. We always, everybody. It's the kind of thing where you meet someone, you're like, oh, are you there's uncle, sister, something? Yeah. It's like very, like, everyone knows everybody or knows of, it's a very small community. So I remember me and my friends there, them kind of going through that like homesickness and feeling, a lack of their community, a little lost. Obviously we're having fun traveling, on the weekends, different places, we're in Europe. It's very easy to travel, doing our studies, etc. And I thought, I have my temple, and I would just go to my temple on Sunday and feel 100% at home. Like, not, obviously it was in Italian, which my Italian is not very good. And I was learning Italian, but so that was a little bit of a barrier, let's say. But going to the temple, while I was studying abroad, I just felt at home. I would go there, meet people, make some friends, do a little service, get a nice vegetarian meal, and go home and feel like, okay, I'm satisfied. I feel connected again. I don't feel like floating in space, which you do sometimes if you're traveling on your own. And if anyone's, kind of like, what am I doing? So that's a huge thing, which I've always really appreciated about our community, and what's helped me, kept me in the path is our community internationally. And wherever I go, we came back from Costa Rica recently, and went to the temple at the end of our trip, which we wished we had gone to at the beginning of the trip, because we like made a friend in an instant. And she was like, you should have told me, I would have took you here. And like that, that's amazing. It really is an amazing thing to be able to go anywhere and just like be able to meet people who care about you, because of that's just their nature, and you share so much with them and you can give and take with each other. So that's one of the biggest things. Obviously there are more, but that's one of them. Yeah.
What's your favorite, what's the place that you have, that you would consider your favorite, that you have really nice memories about?
Yeah, of our travels and temples. For a very long time, it's definitely Mayapur. I did Bhakti Sastri there, and then I did Bhakti Vaibhav, the first part. Bhakti Vaibhav is long. So it's like the one of our courses, which we go into all of our kind of primary texts, right? Bhakti Sastri.
Yeah.
So, and then the Bhakti Vaibhav is specifically for one of our more in-depth texts. Let's say it that way. So I did that, and for years and years, that was absolutely the best experience. It just really was. And it's not that I'm such a spiritual person. I was like relishing living in the holy places. That's not exactly why. It was just so fun. We were in class together, which I shared is one of my favorite things, philosophy and speaking philosophy. But after class, we had our bikes, and we'd go here and we'd go there, and we'd buy snacks, and we'd go on the boat ride to the other island, and there'd be always something going on in the temple, some kind of festival, some kind of event. We'd help with making garlands or Didi outfits. Like, there was just so much going on in the name of bhakti. Like, it was unlimited amount of activities that just felt so like, wow, I can't even do everything there is to do here. You know, I mean, I can't even, so for a long, long time, my airport was definitely on that list for me, for sure. Yeah, of my favorite places.
So cool. I see like a kind of a common theme with you about learning and growing, and you constantly like going to classes,
Yeah.
like doing the learning type of aspect.
Yeah.
And so what would you recommend for those who are like trying to get into the Bhakti tradition? Like how can they learn and grow themselves? Like where would someone start?
Yeah, I think knowing yourself a little bit is very helpful in this regard, because I did realize that quite early on, even when I was younger, obviously growing up in it, but at that time period I was making that decision, I realized, oh, this is what I like. I like to be engaged, like I like to be physically doing something or find my purpose, and I like churning the philosophy. I like the debates. I like the, free will versus agency, all those discussions. And I kind of picked that up, that those are things I enjoy. So I'd make a point to find more of that. And so possibly in the beginning you might be like, well, I just like the singing and the chanting. Well, good news, we have a lot of that out there. So knowing a little bit about yourself and finding maybe one or two people around you who either can encourage that, or a little know enough about things going on, can really see that in you, and you can ask them those questions. I like this stuff, but I'm not really sure, like, what specifically my role could be in it. And I think finding your role, even if it progresses, it's not like just because you did this for a while you have to stay in it. You can be like, oh, I did this, I really liked it, but actually, and then I found this, and I'm gonna now do this. I think that's crucial to keeping you always eager to learn more, right? When you're in a place where your purpose is being fulfilled in some capacity, you feel needed, you naturally like seeking out to learn more. And it could be philosophical wise, it could be more, community wise, but you're interested and invested. And when you're interested and invested, that brings the most out of anyone. Like you're really going to be trying to move quickly through, towards a goal, a spiritual goal you have, or towards the path, right? Yeah, that's usually my advice, is like, well, what do you like? Like, let's just start there. We're all individuals. Krishna, God is also a person, an individual who has likes and dislikes. What do you like? What do you not like? And it doesn't have to be bad. Just, I hate the classes. Oh, okay, that's fine. No problem. So many people are like, oh, class. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's an important part. But maybe there's an aspect of that you really do like about, I like learning about, this specific deity or this personality. Oh, okay. Why don't we look further at that? So that's usually kind of the first stages, is like, let's start with your likes and dislikes, because you have to be realistic with yourself. Yeah.
It's really about dovetailing your skill sets and your talents in the service of Krishna, and just being engaged. That way you feel more of that connection.
Definitely.
Yeah. Just on, like, for yourself, I know learning is something that's important to you, and I'm sure our listeners would be really curious to learn more about your PhD studies. What are you pursuing? What inspired you to go down the path of higher education? And what are your interactions like? Because I know in academic fields, people are very much inclined towards theoretical knowledge, maybe less spirituality. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I absolutely agree that the academic field is not necessarily religious practitioner friendly. They are there. We have in our tradition some amazing scholars. I don't know if you guys are familiar. They're one of the key reasons why I'm going down the PhD route. So some of them taught me in the Bhakti College in Radadesh, that college. And I remember being there thinking, oh my gosh, they do this for a living? Like they get to, like, read some of our texts and really churn it and make it relatable and connect it to academic theories and all these things for a living. Plus, get to be around, our community. And they were so humble and so sweet and so smart. Some of the best people, like really some of my idols in the community, that I thought, okay, that's interesting that I really, really like them so much. And they encouraged all of us like to continue studies if that was something we enjoyed. And I did really well somehow. I mean, I have 2 bachelors. So that was my second bachelor. So I had already done a bachelor's degree. So it was a little like, I think I should know how to do this by now. I mean, I was like, if I do badly at this, I'm going to be wondering what's going on. So it was my second bachelor. So I did have, all the experience of like how that works. But I did really well in my dissertation, like the final project. And they were really like, some of those people that I was like admiring were like, wow, Kumari, this is really good. And I thought, oh, wow. Okay. I'm like, it was really humbling and really inspired me to say, okay, maybe this is something I'm enjoying it, which is, I'm enjoying it. And I'm getting, some appreciation that I did well on this, that I thought, okay, maybe I'll continue a bit. But as life goes, I had a job. I work in nonprofit organizations, a manager, communications, fundraising kind of things, different roles, depends on the organization. So, work and life going on. It took a few years. I did my master's and I was abroad. So living abroad is amazing, but it is difficult to figure out school when you're not sure always what country you're going to be living in the next few years. It's one of the cons. And I know people who did, who become doctors in other countries. And then when they move to a new country, it's a whole mess. So just something to think about. I did my school online in the US because I thought I eventually am probably going to end up back in the US in some capacity. And now I'm doing also my PhD online in the US from Canada, which has been useful again, because if it was in person, I wouldn't be able to be living in Canada right now. And the world moves so far into online sphere that when I did my master's online, it was like, what? You doing it online? It was a whole thing. And I was like, oh, okay. Whew, right. I wasn't sure at the time because I mean, again, mostly I did that route because I didn't know what country. I was living in London. I was living in Thailand. I was, living all over. Anyhow, so my master's was in nonprofit management. It's not in religious studies. It was a whole debate. Should I go down the religious studies path? Because that's where I really was feeling comfortable and inspired by. But also nonprofit management, our, ISKCON community is a nonprofit.
Right.
So there's also a big part of me that helps in that capacity in some of my service and obviously working in nonprofits. So I did that route in my master's, and then my PhD is also in nonprofit management. So it can be very gritty and like, okay, the theories are not like, the management theories there's a lot of very interesting things and of value for any organization and individuals, but it's not philosophy. Let's call it that. It's not as fun as philosophy and debating good and evil and right and wrong and things like that. But I enjoyed it, and I'm getting close to the end because at the end of the day, it's a long journey. So I'm getting closer to the end now, and I'm looking at pro-social and intrinsic motivations and organizational culture, like in organizations. So looking at individuals, like people who work in nonprofits and things, like just understanding their motivations, pro-social meaning for others, intrinsic meaning for themselves, and organizational culture, which is a big, it's a trendy term for a long time now, but you'd be surprised how many organizations haven't figured out that cultivating an organizational culture is crucial to success. So, including, unfortunately, some places that I have lived, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a bit of a mess here, which is a culture. It's a chaotic culture. So for better or for worse, I decided to go kind of more the managerial route and study that. And my goal is to teach and possibly one day start my own nonprofit. That's kind of my end goal.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting and so cool. Just that type of using like what you already have grown up in and then dovetailing your studies towards something like that, and then seeing like how can you continue to use, maybe balance both your Bhakti and your professional career in a way that supports your, I guess, your motivations and your purpose.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to keep that in mind in your professional and personal life.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any, like, one of the terms that we hear often is disconnect to connect, like finding some time away from maybe our educational pursuits or workplace commitments and recharging a bit through different spiritual activities. Is there anything that you do to kind of get back to your day-to-day activities in a more healthy, full manner?
Yeah, I absolutely believe in that. I mean, balance. I was speaking with someone the other day, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual health, like, all have to be in balance. I remember my guru, who's now passed, would like give us an analogy of a juggler, and sometimes it's high there and low here, but they're always in juggle, they're always in movement. And you definitely, that's a lot to take on as an individual, but it is what it is. If you're aware of it, at least you can start now navigating, right? That these three things are always going to be in juggle, and then let alone family life and career, etc. And keeping that in balance is absolutely crucial. And you have to find a way that it does it for you. So for me, I love kirtan. I love sitting and just absolutely just zoning out into it and not having to think about anything else, but just being in kirtan. And anyone who's really, really been in that space, like, it can absolutely be transformative. So I love kirtan, and so many others do. Luckily, we all as a community love kirtan, which is so helpful. But also getting back to nature, just being somebody from, Hawaii, somewhere that's very, very nature heavy. I like crave getting back to nature as often as possible. And that means just going for walks, hikes. We love hikes and seeing natural beauty. It's so easy to remember. I mean, I know growing up, people would be like, wow, God is so amazing looking at nature. When you can see the beauty and the awe, it's so simple and clear that probably somebody had to create this. It's a very clear connection point for many, for some not, but for me, it was always like very, very clear being in spaces of awe and beauty that, yeah, somebody made this. I truthfully believe somebody created this beauty. So going back to nature is something I love to do, and hiking, and I always encourage others, like, anyone want to come and do some nature with me for that reason, right? Just to regroup and balance all those juggling balls. Yeah.
That's so good. And let me see. Do you I really like about the balancing, going into nature and doing and connecting to disconnect. Like, I think that's really important. And what are some of your hobbies that you like to do? Like, is there anything that you specifically do? You like to read, write? Like, what are some things that you do?
Yeah, again, like, things to keep the balance. I definitely love reading. I mean, obviously doing school still sometimes, I mean, I'm sure you too, it's like, ugh, more reading. Sometimes reading. Definitely love reading and hiking, and when available, surfing or being in the water. Absolutely love being in the water, like any opportunity for water, even if it's a pool. I think I was very much like a whale or some kind of aquatic creature in my very recent birth. I really feel that way because I feel I'm very fiery, no guess, and I can feel like a little bit like when I get in water, a little cools the flames, So yeah, getting into nature and water specifically are absolutely. And my husband, I'm lucky, he also enjoys it, so that's something we prioritize. We try to do once a week if possible, obviously walks and things, but getting back, doing a hobby, we prioritize it. There's 7 days a week and you can do this, and one of them is our hobby, which is being in nature and a little bit of exercise for sure, which is absolutely important as well, for that balance.
I know you mentioned your mother's a Prabhupada disciple, and we know that Prabhupada also visited Hawaii on various occasions. I think I even heard that he said Hawaii is like the heavenly planets or something along those lines. Is there any memories or anything you can share that your mother, shared with you in terms of memories of Srila Prabhupada?
Yeah. Srila Prabhupada, my mom and Prabhupada in Hawaii, I believe she was there when he was there as well, because she got initiated or got, joined the movement in in the West Coast, as I mentioned. And at that time, sometimes as you might know, other people were doing the actual like ceremony because he was traveling. So she was one of those that was like at an event where someone else was facilitating the initiation. But my grandmother also got to meet him, which is really special. Who was not necessarily a member of our tradition, and she really respected him. So that was really important to my mom, to see that. And Hawaii, we have obviously a place like in Toronto where he used to stay, and a lot of the people who live there are disciples. It's a very normal thing in the US in general. Like you meet people and they're like, yeah, I'm a Prabhupada disciple. It's a very, very normal. When you travel abroad, sometimes it's more like, oh, it's a very rarity, because it was only, I believe, 5,000 initiates, of now are millions of practitioners. So it is rare now, but at the time, and even in North America, it's very kind of commonplace to meet people who were who joined the movement at Prabhupada's time and were his disciples. So my mom's mood was always she would share things about Srila Prabhupada, and she was very much like, that is her connection. Like she absolutely respected and trusted him, and that's how she dropped everything, left family, left any plans for a career and everything to spread and share our movement at that time worldwide slowly. So she was part of the what we called the bus party. So they were going on buses around at even Vancouver. She ended up in Canada as well, which is interesting. What is that, Pacific Northwest area, doing books at airports. Shoot, unfortunately, one of those people like trouble in the airports. But her connection had always been like to Srila Prabhupada and his devotion and his absolute humility as an individual, and his love for the ladies of the movement. Also, he saw them as his spiritual daughters, and she really, really resonated with that. Even till today, that's like that's how she stays, throughout kind of a lot of things that have happened throughout. She's a little more relaxed now. Definitely. She's grandma. She lives in Alachua, and just, helping be grandma. Honestly, she's a babysitter mostly of her time nowadays, which in my opinion, we need more grandma and grandpas in ISKCON, because it's so important in our community, because you need that, I'm thinking about starting a family, and it's like this, you need that generational wealth of knowledge and connect for communities to survive. So I think there's an important purpose in grandmas and grandpas as well, and what they offer, and just sharing that with the next generation, individually, how to stay in a spiritual path. I'm always like saying, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. How to stay to the end as a practitioner when the world is throwing, grenades at you, to not stay a practitioner. So I think that's the value that, that kind of what she sees as the goal of that she shares now, is like to stay in the movement and be, a normal, kind human being throughout it all. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's so sweet and so nice to hear. And I really like what you said about her, like embracing about what Srila Prabhupada said about women or ladies being like his daughters. So I think that's really touching. And what is that something that's similar? Like, is that something that inspires you as well, or about Srila Prabhupada?
Yeah, I mean, Srila Prabhupada, I think you probably feel the same. I always felt like he was my like spiritual grandfather, for better, for worse. I mean, that's what I felt as a child. We'd see pictures of him, hear stories of him. He was like this family member, is always how I took it. And when you hear, I mean, again, it's not necessarily our philosophical tenet that, Srila Prabhupada is our family member. He is a highly advanced spiritual person, but the way that I just grew up thinking about him and feeling, and even to today, we have all these beautiful festivals and holidays to recognize him, and whenever we share, I'm like the first one in tears, because I just feel like it's, somebody in my family, and I'm just so proud, and so, I mean, I could tear up just thinking about it. So proud and grateful, honestly, is generally the feeling I feel, and even protective, you know, towards him and this amazing movement he created, you know, with so much effort and so much for, you know, absolute determination against all odds. You know, we know his own physical, you know, body odds and obstacles. And I just feel like my mood has always been, and my guru as well as mood has always been like, just help push on, you know, Srila Prabhupada's movement. You know, like that's literally your goal. It's just help in whatever little way, his bigger goal. You know, sometimes the analogy I think about is like those little, if you ever seen the Ramayana, of course you have the cartoon version, the 90s version, my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, and you see the little squirrels and the little turtles and the little building Ram's army.
Putting
I was
through
always
the rocks. Yeah.
yeah, they're putting the pebbles. And I was like, okay, goal in life, just be that little squirrel, that little bird that's throwing the pebble, like one pebble, you know, like that kind of mood is how I've always felt about Srila Prabhupada. He's magnanimous and done amazing feats, like even, you know, Forbes on the list of amazing people in the world, because he's really done a big feat for the world, offering this philosophy and also compassion, you know, to understand more deeply, you know, even the tenets of vegetarianism and things. So my respect and gratefulness towards him as, you know, as the spiritual teacher, but also someone I feel so closely to, has always been like, okay, whatever I can do to just help, whatever it is, like that's my goal in life. And sometimes you get veered off, but then come back. Nope, that's my goal. And I feel very strongly about it, and protective to make sure it's being dealt with and done nicely, and with integrity and with you know, honesty and respect. Yeah.
Really nice. You know, we've learned so much from you at this hearing just your reflections and realizations in this podcast. Is there any words of wisdom, anything you'd like to share with our audience, who maybe specifically those who are looking to start their journey in this path of bhakti, what they can take away?
Yeah, wisdom. I'm not sure if I have any wisdom to share, but I can share. My experience has been, again, kind of just going back what I've shared a few times, is finding your purpose within, you know, you're starting a practice and you're like, wow, this is really interesting. I'm appreciating this about it. I like this. Even just as early on as saying, hey, this is something I like. I'm going to start helping. I'm going to find some purpose within it, whether it be sometimes some of the ladies I meet come and help do some decorations, or like find something to do, like action. You know, bhakti is about love, and love is about action. You know, it's like literally to love someone means to do something for them, to serve them, to help
Acts
them.
of service.
So find action, like get some action involved, whether it's so small. It can be very, very small. It can be simple as on Sundays I come and I help serve the Sunday dinner, you know, or Sundays I come and I just help pick up the chairs for a bit, or just find some action. And people, don't do it alone, do it with other people, because it's very nice to meet them and make some friends. Because once you start action, then you'll build friends, then you can build a community, and then you will find purpose. You can start finding purpose. And we see that with newcomers. Sometimes they just have this natural urge to start helping, and you know, because it's a seed. They're getting the bhakti creeper. They're starting to, it's growing in them. So if someone's feeling that way, please, you know, start acting. And if not, I encourage people to find something, be active in it, and it will get you so much further. You know, starting just with that small step. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. That's a great piece of advice. Just get involved and do some acts of service, because that's the only way to start. And yeah, I think that actually wraps up today's episode. I just wanted to thank you so much, Kumari, for coming on to Transcendental Talks. It's been such a pleasure to hear about your journey through Bhakti, all of your experiences, your travels, how you've learned. And it's just something I think the listeners will really enjoy and will be excited to like practice and integrate into their lives.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been fun to chat with you both.
Thank you again, everyone. That concludes Transcendental Talks Toronto, and please stay tuned for more upcoming podcasts with, you know, exciting guests like Kumari, Kunti, So thank you again.